The Secrets of Terra Silenti by yours truly, Arminus Ar-Feinial. Welcome to Chapter 3, Ghosts of the Past. Cora was on the road traveling from the northern kingdom of Grento and decided to stop for a week's stay in the city of Sheris. She had many friends in this city, one of whom was a young dwarf named Giri. He left the land of Corellia and became a blacksmith in the city. He enjoyed his work and had breakfast with Cora during her last day visiting the city. There was a huge festival going on during that week, one of the few reasons her stay was a bit longer than the rest. She appreciated the music, games, and storytelling by the local bards, and who could forget the food from many different cultures? Elves, men, dwarfs, and even some orc seasoned food was shipped in. Breakfast was made by the dwarf and his wife, ripe meat off the bone, and fine mead. Cora stayed with Gary the entire week and thoroughly enjoyed his company. Well, it was a fine week, Cora said, yawning from the tiredness that the excitement of the festival brought. Thank you, Gary, for your wonderful hospitality, such as not often found among the dwarves, and we elves do not experience much of it beyond our borders. The border of Kinasa, that is. Our elf counterparts of Zinasa are not as hospitable as we normally are. Aye, Gary replied. Lass, it is always a pleasure to have you pointed ears here. You always bring a sense of peace here, a certain kind that is not found elsewhere. For that alone I can thank ye. The hospitality is the least I can show you, lassie. In that I fear there is more than I owe. Oh, do not be silly, Geary, Cora laughed. She was always amused by the feelings of others, for certain feelings she no longer felt, being as old as she was. She was also forgetful sometimes. Your presence is enough for me. After all, I denied much of my inheritance years ago. I do not long for it, but sometimes it is hard. Sometimes, now more so than the past, I feel the desire to return and stay. I remember the last time I was there was not much on pleasant terms, of course. She sighed, and the dwarf lay back in his chair. He folded his arms across his tunic and listened. Cora was prepared to tell him a story. One of home. I was yelled at almost in anger, for I protected someone I cared about. I cared about him since, but now I do not know where he went. As one of the elves that allowed him to take what position he has among the Rangers Guild, a sweet one he is, full of joy and humor. Is always one skilled with the blade and almost equal skill with the bow. He has rightfully earned it. I be sure he has, Gary replied, and ye should be proud of giving someone the honor of that. No easy task to lead that it is, the best there, and I am sure some of them be arrogant as well, he said. He took a bite of his chicken breast. Some of it got stuck in his red beer. I am proud, Cora went on, but one of the bad traits we elves have is that of arrogance. We can be very prideful with our old age and our experience, and we indeed think we know best. And oftentimes we are, but then there are other things we often turn a blind eye to. She took one last drink of her mead. Gary, I must be going. It was a pleasure. Aye, lassie, he said with joy. Have a safe travel. I hope to see you sometime soon. Aye, you will. She got up from her chair and headed for the door. Wait, he said. He got up and grabbed a nearby sack. Take this, please. It is a few provisions I have set up for you. The roads are dangerous, at least on the Glenwood Road. It has indeed become a very treacherous place. I can take care of myself, Gary, but thank you for your thoughtfulness, she said. I'm more than aware of the danger on the roads, for I've traveled these roads too long. I'm aware of every stone. My lady, he insisted, bringing the sack door. It would insult me if you did not take it. She stopped and looked at him. I will take it, she replied. She loved her friend and did not wish to upset him, although she did not want to accept help. One thing that had not changed in over 4,000 years was her sense of independence. Do not wish to upset an old friend. She took the sack and he nodded. Farewell, Gary. She left the building and headed for the gate towards the Canuzia Road. She said farewell to one of the guards as she was passing by. She could not help but notice a man struggling with another guard. He was frantic and kept pushing the guard away from him, not in anger, but out of fear. Of this she was certain. She stood and watched the conflict. "They are coming back," he told the guard. He was frantic, fighting to get in the gates of the city. "Let me in, please." He was sweating, his face red as a rose. "Please, the evil is returning. It's coming for me." Cora approached them. She had never seen this behavior. Her thoughts turned back to the dark times. Nothing like this has happened. Even with the thoughts of the Dark One, he never let anyone escape his grasp. Decrepit Tower, this cannot possibly be your doing. What is going on here? She put one hand on her bow. She intended to fight if it was going to get out of hand. "Stifle, man!" yelled the guard. He was trying to restrain the man, but did not appear he was successful. The fear of the man that came from the road pumped up his adrenaline. He was going to get into that village even if it killed him. "You know I cannot," he replied. "It is coming, this sickness. Nothing can prevail against this ever-growing darkness. The shadows are falling. The forest withered, fire and dust. It will all come to pass." I said, "Listen to me. You all must know." "If I may," Cora asked the guard. The guard nodded and stepped away from the crazed man. She walked towards the man. "Sir, what is coming? What is this evil that you speak of?" For the first time since he had arrived, he was calm. He looked at her, terror in his face. "There's an evil down that road. An evil that is unknown to the world. Slayed a group of goblins last night, it did. It would have taken me had I not run for it, but even without a torch, the sights still haunt me. Blood was everywhere." He was weeping now. "Goblins are dead. Yes, I know the road of Glenwood is dangerous, but not Cornusia. Do you not understand? It is coming for me. It does not want me to know what I do. It will destroy me when it can. Protect me, please." "What reason do you think it would have to come after you?" she queried. She turned to the road and felt an evil presence there. Something dark. She was unsure of what it was as the air grew cold. "What is this great evil that you speak of?" "Is it darkness? From the shadows it comes. In the night it walks, devouring everything in its path. I witnessed the fire. I investigated. I was hoping to enjoy some company on the road, perhaps even some rest." He turned and his face held more despair. "I saw a ghostly woman. Everything about her was pale white. Her cloak was tattered. Old it was, and the skin on her face seemed to be decomposing also. Her eyes, one was brown and one red, was horrifying. When I looked into her eyes, I saw what appeared to be a great battle, a fierce battle. Elves, men, dwarves, and orcs long ago were killed. The battlefield was littered with corpses spreading across miles and miles. It is coming." He started to whimper and went to the ground, curling up into a ball. The guard stretched his hand, wondering what he was trying to say. Cora went over to him and patted his back. Her hand glowed white, and the man was calm and stood back up straight. "Give this man passage," she said to the guard. "Let him through. If I find any proof of this evil on the road, I will send word for you. If no word is sent for you, it means I have continued my journey and everything is quite all right. Take heart. Make sure you accommodate this man. Make him welcome." "Aye, my lady," the guard said. "It will be as you say." The guard took the man in, and he was let into the city. Cora left on the Cornusia Road. It was a long and peaceful road, and she took care with every step. The road was dirt, some small trenches, which were likely dug out to keep the roads from flooding by the men of old. This is also where many of the leaves had fallen. The winter was coming. She kept looking for signs of the growing evil that the man spoke of earlier. She followed his tracks, and it was not easy tracking where he had been instead of where he was going. There were no signs of fighting along the way. She looked hard and for a good long while, almost an entire week, saw nothing. On the first day of the second week that she traveled, she noticed something. The brush and the trees were separated. It looked relatively recent to her. She walked along the separation and saw what appeared to be a fireplace. It was no longer warm, no glowing red ashes. All of it had been turned to white charcoal. She went beyond the fireplace and saw a tent. She looked inside and saw goblin corpses, some dismembered. The stench of the long dead brought back memories of the battlefield long ago. Images of men, elves, and dwarves went through her mind, causing her much grief. She covered her mouth at the sight. It had been long since she had come across this much death. Since the dark times. It was indeed something to upset her stomach. Some of the bodies were decomposing, others had burn marks, and the insects made their homes in them. Cora went back to the road and ran the rest of the way to Filder. It was a large city with walls made of stone. It was not dwarven made, but a fine piece of work, even according to some of the dwarves. The walls were thick and strong, most likely able to defend against hordes of orcs. No wonder they need this protection. Orcs travel these roads quite often, she thought. Felder was on the border of Shiro, Corellia, and Kadrasar. She went to the gate and spoke to the guard. It had been 2 weeks since she left, and the sun was setting. Sir, may I come in? She had asked. Not too many places would let people in after nightfall, and those that did were pretty horrifying on the inside, with murderous deeds and usually some branch of the Assassin's Guild running things. It had been about 2 weeks since I left Sheriff's. Please, I know it is late. Who are you, and where are you from? He asked harshly. His facial expression was stern and held pain and despair. What be your business here? I am Cora, an elf of the Woodland Realm. I was coming from Sheriff's, as I have said, she explained. I come here only to rest this night, sir. The guard scanned up her body, up and down. What kind of woman brings weapons with her wherever she goes? Bow, arrows, 2 swords strung to her waist? What kind of trickery are you pulling? He demanded. His hand firmly grasped his sword, but his gaze never left hers. I'm merely passing through, sir. These roads are almost never safe. Not as dangerous as they used to be, but not safe. It would be a mistake to travel these roads without being prepared for war, Cora replied. And I have business to attend to out west. That is all this I can assure you. He loosened his grip on the sword. You may pass, he said. But if I hear you causing any trouble, it will be off to the dungeon with you. We have too many orcs and goblins to contend with. We need not add more to our troubles. The damned assassins are trying to infiltrate our politics again. Leave everything alone, get to an inn, rest, and get out. I'll cause no trouble, kind sir, she promised. She walked inside. The city was vast and had lots of people in it. The constant noise of chatter, clip-clop of horses' hooves, and the squeaking of wheels gave her unrest. Many of the buildings were made of a kind of rock, like stone or granite, while some of the larger buildings were made of white marble. The streets were gray brick. People made little noise walking across it, for their footwear was soft, not hard like an iron boot, which was what the guards wore. Most of those she saw at this time of day were the prostitutes and beggars. She went towards the western gate of the city, where there was an inn called the Teal Scorpion. She walked inside to see many drunkards and an orc struggling with several guards. He was arrested and cuffed and escorted outside. Many others were just talking and yelling, throwing darts and playing cards. She just went over to the bar and asked for the barkeeper. She had just reached the bar when she felt a light tap on her shoulder. Hello, pointed to your mistress, the bartender greeted her. How may I help you this fine night? I need a place to rest for the night, she said. That is, there's a crash. She was startled and jumped backwards. Forgive me, miss. I'll be right with you. The bartender turned around and yelled for the guards again. Immediately, 2 guards rushed in. What be the problem now? A man was causing a scene in the corner. He was yelling and screaming louder than the rest. Truly, I tell you, evil has come again and is out on the road. Do not go on that wretched road. The guards did not hesitate to tackle the man, who people were throwing their food at. They started dragging him out by the feet as he scratched the floor. Do not go to the Glenwood Road. in his evil. As he was taken outside, there was a thud and a scream stopped. Cora rushed outside. One of the guards had hit the man in the head with a club. She knew from that he had to be dead, as the man's eyes had rolled back and his head was crushed. What is the meaning of this? She yelled. She was appalled by the action of the guard. Her face showed it, twisting with the fury known only to be possessed by an elf. Was this really necessary? Aye, it was, madam, one of the guards replied. He walked closer to her until his chin nearly met her forehead. I do not care what evil he speaks of. My job is to keep the city peaceful, doing whatever it is that is necessary. Now go back inside before I run you in. The guards escorted the now dead man away. She was sure that he was going in an overcrowded dungeon or thrown into a pit where they burned the dead. I will have to ask the Rangers Guild to investigate this later. She returned inside and was greeted by the innkeeper. Welcome, miss, he began. I apologize about all the commotion. It happens in the city quite often. One night stay? She looked at him with furious eyes. Do rants like that happen often? She asked. Surely, how can you maintain an inn with all of this ruckus? Why, yes, they do. It's hard sometimes, but that is what happens when one lives in Felder. Indeed, the chaos never ends, she replied, buttoning up his brown vest. Quite often, they all started about a month ago. No one has ever investigated this? Cora asked rather sarcastically. She was quite curious why none of the local adventure men were not interested in finding this out. Perhaps the rants by these crazy men coming from the road did frighten them. No, they have not, he replied, shaking his head. Not to my knowledge, at least. There are posts on the walls asking for someone to investigate. Our guards would do it, however, they're tied up enough as it is. No one has ever been up to the task. I shall take the room, she said. She wanted little to think about the events that occurred with the murdered man and the crazed man that now lay in Sheriff's. I'll go to the Glenwood Road first thing in the morning. I thank you very much, miss, he said, taking the gold that she handed him. Follow me right this way. He escorted her to her room. It was a double room shared with another woman who also seemed fatigued. The innkeeper left the room and allowed Cora to make herself at home. She approached a woman who seemed to be twitching uncontrollably. She was confused as to why she wasn't staying in the single bedroom. Hi, my name is Cora of Canassa, she introduced herself. The woman rocked back and forth on the rocking chair in the corner of the room, not seemingly taking notice, looking ahead with no expression on her face. What be your name? Cora pressed. She felt uneasy with this. This is a strange city indeed. I know it has been years since I walked through here, but so much has changed. The woman's eyes looked up suddenly. I like your necklace, she said, jerking her head. She reached out her hand to shake Cora's, who had no idea what to make of this. She felt a sudden coldness towards this woman, so much that it really frightened her. Thank you very much, miss, Cora said instead. It was a gift from many years ago. A friend of mine. May I try it on? The woman asked. She was uncontrollably twitchy. Cora took her necklace off and put it out in front of her. The woman snatched it away. Cora walked backwards to the bed, not taking her eyes off the woman who put on her necklace. There is something about her that is so familiar. In the distance, the woman whispered, Fakino. But the elf didn't hear her. She fell asleep. The next morning, she woke up but could not move. She found that she was tied up to the bed, each limb to a post. The candles were lit, and the early morning sun shone through the window. She looked down, and all her equipment was gone. Her gaze shifted to the other bed. She saw the woman wearing her armor, giggling menacingly. Her sword stretched out in front of Cora, who looked to be in great fear. She struggled with the rope. The woman swung the sword down and missed the mark. Cora managed to break off one of the posts and swung it at the woman. It hit her in the face and sent her across the room. Cora immediately used her free hand to untie her hands and feet. She got up and wrestled the woman to the ground, cracked the woman's neck, and finally took the sword and cut her throat. She sat down on her bed, wondering what a woman would do this to a stranger, unprovoked. Her face was reddened with the rush of excitement. It seemed like she wanted my very identity. What is this? Envy? She thought. She got her equipment, her swords, and her bow. Her armor was ruined, and her cloak was still usable. She donned her weapons and cloak and headed downstairs. She marched over to the innkeeper. What is the meaning of this? She yelled at him. She grabbed his vest and pulled him up close. There are many insane people going about in this city, and you harbor one of them. Why not report it like you do the rest of them? If you're going to be cruel, at least be consistent about it. Madam, he said fearfully, what are you talking about? You were in a single bedroom. There was no one else in there. I was nearly killed this morning. A woman tied me up to the bedpost, wearing my equipment, and tried to execute me using my own sword, she retorted, gesticulating to emphasize her point. That is what I am talking about. Madam, he countered, snapping his fingers. One of his guards approached him. No one was let in last night. We closed the doors around midnight. I let no one into your room. Now let go of me. Prove to me that no one else was in my room last night, she replied. I know what it was I saw. The innkeeper went up to the room. Inside was no sign of a struggle of the broken bedpost. Her broken leather armor was still lying on the floor, but there was no body in it as she left it. Cora walked in the room utterly confused. There was no one else here, madam. Now kindly take your armor and get out of my inn. Cora did just that. She left the inn irritated. She took her armor to the nearest blacksmith and had it repaired. She left for the Glenwood Road just after that. Such a horrid city, she said to herself. She headed west, towards Malitu. During the time she traveled the road, she saw no sign of strange beings. It was quiet, not even a goblin in sight, which was strange indeed. Nothing had seemed normal since she left Sheris. Something cannot be right in these parts. It's something awakened. What could it be? She thought out loud to herself, talking as the leaves began to fall around her. The wind grew cold through the woods, sending a chill up her spine. Strange days indeed. Cora stayed on the north side of the road and kept traveling. She climbed up a tree to sleep, keeping her pack nice and close at hand. She arrived in the village of Malitu and saw a dwarf pacing back and forth. His beard flowed in the soft breeze. His hands were behind his back as one of his guards were talking to a merchant coming to and from the great village. She approached the dwarf. What be the matter, Master Dwarf? She asked him. You pace like someone just died, someone dear to you. It's not often that dwarves reveal their emotions. This, too, is troubling. Exactly how big is this web? He looked up and stared at her. Aye, he began. An old friend of mine came back from one of his hunts near a month ago. It's sorely hurt he is. A wound so severe I have never seen anyone recover from such a blow. His voice trembled as he continued. He provide for himself and others. If he goes, many others will go nights without food. He has indeed been a valuable part of this community. Even a month ago, the healers told me he is physically fine, but he has yet to get up. He has been sleeping the entire month, and oh, how long to see him up off of one of his hunts, even just one last time. Such grave news, said Cora. I have expected much. I've heard reports in the last two cities I was in, first Shears, then in Felder. People come off the road with insanity and report a great evil is coming. Some claim to have been attacked, others that they are the next victim of this evil that they speak of. She looked at him gravely and felt compassion towards him. Perhaps I may be of help. I do have some knowledge of the healing arts. It has been nearly 200 years since I have passed this way, but I am from Kinasa. Where may I find him? What will be his name? He looked almost overjoyed when he heard her offer, just like the joy a dwarf finds when he has dug his way into a large cavern full of nothing but gold and jewels filled to the very ceiling. Please, all the help we can get him is greatly appreciated by me, no matter where it comes from. He pointed out the next gate. It lies in the south towards the Citadel Road. He's in the healing ward. You cannot miss it. Just head over yonder and let yourself in. His name is Cack of the Woodland Realms. Her pointed ears jerked and her face turned joyous. I won't be there. But I cannot help but wonder why was he here. Last I knew, he was still dwelling in Knasa, but did leave rather unannounced. Last I heard, he said something about being secure. Did not get along too well with the king and queen, he said. Who knows, really? He was never truly clear about himself. Many things were mysterious, but he always held rather, a sense of optimism. Always made us smile, the dwarf replied. That sounds much like the elf I knew him to be, of course. Cora let out a nervous laugh and ran off to the southern gate, with her elven feet avoiding all that could have been in her way. She entered the healing ward and saw many people leaving. Patients or former patients were walking out, some were coming in. She walked inside, following the corridors down until she found the patient room where Keck was. She looked in the ward and saw some of the healers still working their magic upon him. She saw one of the healers writing everything down and went over to her. It was Corla. What is his condition, Cora asked. That we do not know, she replied with a sigh. The wound itself was bad enough, however, there was something else. It took some time to get rid of that nasty cut. There's something else in his mind, like an unknown plague, a sickness, if you will. We just do not know. Forgive me, but what is your name and who are you? I am Cora. I am on an important business, actually, having to do with him. I, too, am from the Woodland Realm, she replied. What do you mean, his mind? Hi, Cora. I'm Corla. He talks a lot in his sleep. She paused. Keck started muttering. We do our best to record every bit of it. He talks about a war, a great war long ago, the final one. This makes little sense to me as we have not had a great war since the time of great trials. This does not make any sense to me. How about you, Miss Cora? Just Cora, thank you, she replied. Her thoughts went over to the last war, the great trials. Men, elves, friends killed before her, and there was nothing she could do about it. She had been helpless to save them. The last thing she remembered were the faces of the human kings of the time. The time of great trials is over. It was nearly 4,000 years ago, but I still remember it. He talks in memories. Whose memories, I wonder? You're a resident here, are you not? She looked down at Cack, who was still sleeping. Yes, madam, Cora answered. Her gaze was fixed upon Cora. Her curiosity of elves was piqued, and she could not hide it. Many years ago, when I was just a girl, I remember this elf walking into town that time he came to stay. When he was not alive when you were. Even he was not alive when you were. He is young even to your standards. He is young, Cora agreed. I remember when I passed him the authority to lead the Rangers Guild. Her thoughts went over to the sickness, as it was called. She was very curious to what this thing was. There might be a key in what he says. Something. There are few things that can poison a mind, even if it was over a month ago. Does he explain much about the war? Not much, said Corla, taking hold of Keck's hand. Only about elven kings and a queen, nearly every single one of them being killed by a darkened figure. Decrepit tower, she acknowledged. She remembered the wretched man, evil to the very core, although that man did say he was after revenge for what Umvertus did to him. This was the one villain she could not defeat without sheer luck. He died. I destroyed him, but why is he coming back? Is he coming back? This is grave news. If this elf has met a great evil, then it has come back, but how? I destroyed him nearly 4,000 years ago. You would know more about this than I would, madam, the wizard said. She turned her gaze back to Cora. You are older and wiser than most. You, I am sure, are one of the oldest living beings left in this world. Kek began to mutter again. Nothing can prevail. The darkness is coming again. Stronger than ever it will be. Nothing can stand against growing sickness. Goblins, women. No! She was no woman, but she wants my life. But why? Wraith? No! He cried out, lifting himself up from the sickbed. Quirrell and the others tried to restrain him, but they could not. His strength superseded theirs. His fear gave him power over them. The adrenaline flowed through him, revealing a new strength almost superhuman. Cora ran and tackled him on the ground. Only she was able to restrain him. In a moment, he was motionless, not through Cora's strength, but fear. It had left him paralyzed. Cora embraced him almost like a mother would her child. He looked straight, and only fear was held in his gaze. Shh, Cora said gently to him. It will be okay. Nothing here will harm you, for I am here with you. She rested her chin on his head, his cheek on her chest. Cora, find some straps, any kind, leather preferably. We need restraints for what we are about to do. The wizard left to find some straps as Cora tried to keep Cat calm. How can one taint the soul of someone as innocent as you? Cat had finally fallen back to sleep when the wizard arrived with some straps. He was eased back onto the bed. They tied down each of his limbs he had. He would do no damage, nor could he disrupt any of the procedures. Cora looked over to his head and casting a spell that enabled her to see what he was dreaming. What she saw was a nightmare she had witnessed nearly 4,000 years ago. She saw her mother and father Krillian, the king of Zanassa. She saw many of her friends on the battlefield, either dead or dying, many others, men like the kings of Grento, Shiro, and Corcrest. They too were slain. She saw each of the servants of Decrepit Tower, Irenu, Maiatruva, Glutua, Fastatru, Avara, and Socorus. One of the servants was missing, one whom she had forgotten long ago. Much of the elven magic had forced a few out of memory, as this one had been. She also found herself standing side by side with Maiatruva and Irenu. Each of these she had killed, but who was the one servant who did not reveal herself? There was another memory. She was battling the servants inside a mountain. There was a pool and some elven warrants she had taken with her. The jagged rocks were very sharp. The steps echoed into the tunnel. There was a mystical green light ahead, showing the way in, deeper through the mountains. She walked in and saw two people, a man ranger and a woman wizard, talking with one another. Their mumbled conversation quickly turned into a fight. She fought the wizard while her elven comrades attacked the man, who killed them one by one. She, on the other hand, nearly killed the wizard and was now working on the other. She, too, was besting in combat until he heard a name. Until she heard a name. Decrepit Tower. There's another flash of light. Decrepit Tower showed up with the rest of his servants. He mumbled his words so she could not make them out. It quickly escalated into another fight. The 6 against her. She was quickly overwhelmed. She was placed on the ground, begging for death. Decrepit Tower and 5 of his servants left. The one who stayed was the wizard, who kneeled and laughed sinisterly. I know that laugh, Cora thought. I'm not going to kill you. She laughed again. Then she saw a mystical green light flash through her eyes. There was something appealing about it, like she wanted to reach out and touch it. That would be too nice. That be not my own nature. Maiatruva's hand closed Cora's ears, and the caves echoed with the screams of this nightmare. Within moments, she was let back up. The wizard took her by the hand and escorted her down the halls. With nearly every step, her vision was distorted with which was seemingly a constant twitching. She did not resist. Maiatruva brought her into another room with a closed door. Her vision turned to normal as she saw Maiatruva and a human warrior. One with brown hair tied up in a ponytail walked in willingly with her. Just moments after the door shut, there was more screaming. She tried to get out of this dream and was met by a ghostly figure that scarred her mind. Cora left Kak's mind. Terror was written on her face as she sweated, leaving his mind. She leaned back against the wall, catching her breath. What be wrong, Cora? Cora asked. She saw the sudden shock within her, panting, and it was immediately apparent in her facial expression as well. Sweat poured down her face. There was no response, so she walked over to her. What is wrong, Cora? She grabbed her hand and was instantly snatched away. Cora looked into her eyes. She looked as if she had seen a ghost of some sort, the ghost of the past. All people feared ghosts, even though they were normally helpful and could do no real harm. We need to get him to my father, Cora managed, stuttering. He alone has mastered the healing's hearts. I cannot do this alone. My father and his master mages can help him. No herbs or medicine can help him now. What is wrong? Cora insisted, still showing compassion. She was also filled with anxiety. The one she called friend and grew to love almost as if brother's fate was now unknown. What did you see? I saw things. Things I have seen in the past, things even you would not understand, for I myself do not. Cora's voice and breathing started to become regular. Whatever did this is still inside him. It must be taken out. Whoever did this will be looking for him. I really hope whatever it does not come this way. Did Kak show up with anything? Aye, he did, Cora replied. His horse and the rest of his gear. Get them ready, she demanded. Get him ready to move. I'm taking him south. I mean, no disrespect, but you nor your healers have the knowledge or the resources to help him here. Cora left and went back to the dwarf. Cora hurried and got Kak's equipment into the carriage, which she then tied to his horse. Inside the carriage, she didn't neglect to bring food or water. There was plenty of it, and even for such a long journey, they would need to remember to live off the lands as well. She intended to join Cora on her adventure and see outside the walls once and for all if she would have her. How is he? The dwarf called as he saw Cora running to him. There was a glimmer of hope left. Will he be okay? Perhaps, she answered grimly, taking a moment to catch breath. He is sick, ill. He will not be okay until I take what ails him out. For me to do that, I must take him to my father. He has perfected the healing arts, and I suspect only he will be able to do this. I must take him south to Kinasa. Cora paused and let the dwarf gather his thoughts. I failed to get your name. What is it? I am Carter, captain of the guard, he replied, and he brushed his hands through his beard. Is it safe to move him? I mean, shouldn't your father come here if that's the case? He did not concern himself about anything of the stranger. My father is a busy man. He is the king of Kinasa. He cannot simply leave. It would be easiest for everyone to transport him, but he will also likely be safer on that road than here, she answered. How do you mean? Came the dwarf's query, accompanied by a puzzled look. Is he dying? Not that I know of, nor can I accurately tell, she replied. I do not think he is anyway, but whatever did this to him is likely coming to look for him. So if whatever it is comes this way, we will soon be in a world of trouble. So too will this village be. Very well, Carter replied, understanding the seriousness of the situation. Whatever was powerful enough to take down a serious hunter was something to be wary of. Take him and go as fast as you may. I will be sure not to let anyone know which way you are going. Make sure it is so. Farewell, Carter. Cora bowed her head and ran back in the other direction. Towards the gate, she found Cora walking the horse towards her. There, she handed the reins to her. Everything is set. Food and water. He and his equipment are in the back, she explained. Thank you very much, Cora. Farewell. Cora mounted the horse. I would like to join you, Cora asserted. For so long have I desired to see outside this village's walls. I want an adventure. To see the world before I grow too old. May I? Cora was excited more than ever, at least since she left Sheris. Ever since then, strange things have been occurring around her. Honestly, I would be happy for the extra hand. After all, strange things have happened. I would like someone to talk to on the road. Hop in the carriage, she invited. She watched Corla get into the carriage using her staff as leverage. Cora drove the horse-drawn carriage to the south gate and bade farewell to the guard there. As they moved off, Corla looked back at the village with the conflicting emotions of joy and homesickness. She was going to miss her home and had a sense of fear, for she considered what Cax said to her before his last hunt. You will see things you wish had not happened. They will haunt you. She held that secret fear in her, but she knew that it was too late to turn back now. And thus concludes Chapter 3 of The Secrets of Terra Silenti. Hope y'all enjoyed. Farewell.